our final speaker, I don't think needs too much introduction, but Brian, well, he's a national treasure, isn't he? And one of the country's great actors, and perhaps you do know, but a huge animal lover, and has written a fantastic book called The Panther in My Kitchen, which really details his fascination with animals and all the wonderful things he's done. But he's also been for many years a vice patron of Dogs for Good, and we're immensely pleased because Brian has done a lot of things for us over the years. So it's wonderful to have him here tonight. When I spoke to his fantastic agent, Stephen, he said, I don't know quite how you'll manage to stop Brian once he gets into flow, but we're delighted to have him. He is mic'd up, but I'm sure he doesn't really need it. But big welcome for Brian Blessed.
Thank you, my old son. Oh, good heavens, that's what you look like. Well, I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm astonished at this. That's Misty. I'll come to Misty right at the end of my story, because she was a shock for me, a huge shock. But I never know what I'm going to say. I mean, there's so much you can say. First of all, congratulations, 30 years, my old son. Brilliant. Wonderful success. My God, we need people like you. And because we are, I feel very strongly, the guardian of this planet. We're the guardian of all the animals. Anyway, I run before my horse. I want to say that a short while ago, in 1990, I made the film about Mallory of Everest. It's called Sir Galahad, the man who was last seen 300 feet from the summit in 1924. And we don't know to this day whether he climbed it or not. Anyway, I followed in his footsteps wearing clothes like this, like he did. In 1990, the Americans, the British, Bonington, everybody, we all got together. BBC, was it possible, because I was 57 at the time, to go to these great altitudes? We made the film, we got to where Mallory disappeared, and it won all kinds of awards for the BBC. It was on television twice a day, 87-minute film. Anyway, they said, Brian, you must go to the Tenerife Film Festival. You've won Best Actor for Galahad of Everest. But I don't act in it, I just climb a mountain. Anyway, I went there, and there was Daniel Day-Lewis, Last of the Mohicans, on my right, and Kevin Costner, Prince of Thieves, on my left. And they're all themselves with laughter. And I never won a thing. Best Actor at the Tenerife Film Festival. And it was a great bone on a rock. And I took it home, and my Jack Russell ate it. And that's the story of my life. I mean, look, where do I start? The other day I went to a function. I'll give you an idea of what I'm like. I went to a function a short while ago, and I thought, it was very important. I thought, I'll never get there. I got in the kitchen, and there was a kind of Shetland pony in the kitchen. It had got through into the kitchen. It was eating all the dog food, and it all over the kitchen. And I thought, I'll never get. Have you tried to shove a Shetland pony out the kitchen? Come on, you. Anyway, I never thought I'd get there. And so that gives you the ambience of my life. But dogs were not, I didn't have that great affinity in a strange way with dogs, cats and things like that. I was born in Yorkshire, Mexborough, 1936, war years, exciting years, but there were stray cats everywhere, but not dogs. You know, I think they were very expensive, you see, for working class people to have. And so that Wendy, the Labrador, was in the street next door to me, and I made friends with Wendy. She was lovely and soft, with soft brown eyes. There's my first experience with a dog. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to jump right ahead. Of course, all this time, as you know, I work with wild animals. I've worked with gorillas, sexed up female gorillas. They find me sexy because I look like a gorilla. I look like a yeti. I'm a King Kong man, I'm a Goo Goo man, I'm an ape man. And the gorillas absolutely adore me. Because I actually love my face because I do look like a yeti. And I just I love myself. Anyway, I, of course, helped to rescue the elephant, Annie, you know, from the circus, and that man who tortured it. I gave him a swift kick. when we rescued Annie and this, that, and the other. And so all over the world, I've worked with wild animals. When I was in Richmond in the 1960s, I was in Z Cars at the time, and then the Three Musketeers. I had a house in Richmond, and I worked there with Geoffrey Bosworth, and we had a great collection. We were collecting wild animals from all over Britain because you could get them from Harrods. You could get any animal in the world from Harrods. And we went there, and the people couldn't keep them. They had leopards in their flats, and cheetahs, and things like that. And Geoffrey Bosworth and I, we made a kind of sanctuary. Quarantine was given by the government in Richmond. I had 2 acres of land in Richmond, and we rescued all these animals and sent them back to the country of origin. So I was animals, 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 but life. So I worked with these wild animals. I went all over the world, climbing mountains, going through deserts. And so animals became part of my soul, me being so atavistic. Anyway, in the early 70s, I met Hildegard Neal. Hildegard Neal was Cleopatra to Charlton Heston's Antony, and was with Peter Finch in England Made Me, and with Roger Moore in The Man Who Haunted Himself. She was the face of the 70s, aquiline, classical. All the actresses said she's more beautiful than any of us. She's so classical, and here I am looking like a gorilla. And I did this series, Boy Dominic, and she met me. And we fell incredibly, deeply, madly in love. And people couldn't understand it. Christ, how can she fall in love with a gorilla? Anyway, that was the beginning of my downfall. I never, from that day on, had a penny to scratch my ass because when I met her, she was in Richmond, she had a flat, and she had a tiny little house in Norfolk. And I said, right, we'll get married, etc., etc. We worked out we're going to have this cottage in Chobham. And then I saw that she had dogs, cats, and everything else. Oh, Christ almighty, I've inherited all this. So we went to live in Brick Hill, which was rather like Brigadoon, the musical that appears every 100 years. And there she introduced me to animals. And we kept them, we rescued dogs from we were at the RSPC all the time. So we had Jack Russells, we had Labradors en masse. And I was employing people to look after them and so forth. I employed about 7 people to look after all the animals. And then we moved from there to where we are now. And about 4 acres, 5 acres, and I employed 7 people, and we had all the animals there. But you see, Hildegard taught me, this extraordinary aquiline classical lady said, Brian, you work with Black Panthers, you work with lions, you work with animals. But it's an adventure to you. Life is an adventure to you. You never quite deeply look at a dog. We've got Hamish and Nick here and all the other dogs, about 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of them. You play with them and they love you. And you roll all over the floor and you talk rubbish to them. And rolled with the dogs to relax and was at home with them. But she said, and of course, you're besotted. She said, with giant dogs, you like giants. You like big things, and so forth. And my ambition with a dog was to have an Auchaga, the great Russian giant that could kill wolves, or the Mackenzie River dog. If you see the film The 13th Warrior, in that film, well, in Canada, you see this great big dog going around attacking people. That's a Mackenzie River dog. Oh, I wanted a Mackenzie River dog. And then I was one day at a cricket match. Andrew Lloyd Webber, because I was in Cats, it's extraordinary. I remember getting a boo the first night with an audience. The usual dog about the town is much inclined to play the clown, and far from showing too much pride, is frequently undignified. He's such an easy-going lout, he'll answer any hail or shout. Lots of boos from the dog lovers, because I was playing the king of the cats. Anyway, I digress. Where was I? Anyway, during this time, They did The Hound of the Baskervilles, the Americans, and I was playing the villain in it, and Ian Richardson was Dr. Watts in the film. Big American director. He said, any tips, Brian, about making this film? I said, yeah, make The Hound of the Baskervilles wonderful. Make it absolutely bloody marvelous. I said, every time they do the film, it's a bloody Great Dane with a bit of phosphorescence on its face. It's described as big as a donkey, gigantic and terrifying. I'll tear you apart. I said, and I've just got the dog for you. And I said, I'd met at a cricket ground with Andrew Lloyd Webber. I was sitting there asleep one day. I was on number 5 or number 6, whatever it was, in the batting order, charity cricket match. And I felt this big licking on my face. And there was, I sat in this chair, was this bloody dog with a head that big, shoulders that big. It was an Anatolian from Turkey. Oh, you're my kind of doggy. This is my doggy, you know. So I said, I've got to have an Anatolian. Well, Brian's only 5 in the country. We can't really have them here, Anatolians, because they can't take the medicine. They can't, you know, to protect them. It will kill them. They're too pure from Turkey. Anyway, I said, they're breeders in this country. They've got about 6 or 7 of them. Get one of the Anatolians. They've got them black, etc., big black ones, as well as beige. And right, we'll bring them in, Brian. And anyway, a few days later, I went to see them. I getting on with the Hound of the Baskervilles. Well, we got the Anatolian in. It's taken us 2 days to recover, Brian. It pinned us in the corner. The casting director and everybody, great big jaws. Christ almighty, we had to be rescued and they took it away. Anyway, so I was besotted with giant dogs. I got on very well with them. But my wife said, you know, when all our animals, because we had so many, we had donkeys and ponies, but when any of the dogs, when any of our dogs, Brian, Hamish, suddenly is ill, you brush it off. Oh, we'd be all right. I'll give him a few pills here. Look, he's getting better already. Whereas I've been weeping all night. I weep all night. Because, of course, a dog gives much more than it receives, as you know. That's the great heart of a dog. They give much more than they receive. How do you mean? You're not aware of it, Brian. You're wonderful with the dogs. They love you. But it's a game to you. And I weep because I'm scared one of them might die, etc., etc., etc. And she says, you are in love with giant dogs. One day you'll meet a little tiny dog and it'll make a breakthrough with you. And it will break your heart. You know, I love dogs. I know you do, darling. But you overlook little dogs and so forth. Anyway, got a long story short of all the animals I've known. I remember going to the RSPCA one day and Christmas time, and all the dogs were there. And they'd had a dog in there for about 9 months called Jessie. It looked like dried compost. I said, oh, put the in the back of the car. Yeah. We had so many animals. Put the back. He's looking at it, sweet eyes. Put it in the back. It looked like, I mean, look at nothing. Put it in the back of the car. So anyway, so we did. And I phoned up I was doing Long John Silver at the time. I phoned up and said, how is Jessie? Hildegarde on the phone, how is Jessie and her pups? The RSPCA, unknown to them, the dog had given us 11 pups. So that was 11 more dogs. And that was us. More money, more money, more money. Oh, I mean, I employed people by the dozen. Horses, donkeys, everything, the lot. Jessie, by the way, was always jumping into graveyards in the nearby village where the bodies had just been put down there, scratching to try and find them. It was a big joke. The people in the village said, I saw Jessie the other day walking down the road, you know. There she was. I think she had Mrs. Green in her jaws. So Jessie was always falling into bloody graves all the time. I said, can you please, Mr. Blessing, can you please keep Jessie away from the graves? It's terrible, you know, because suddenly Jessie wasn't there, and I could hear in the distance, because she'd fallen in the grave and couldn't get out. So she was always kind of going after the dead bodies. Anyway, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to talk about that. It's not for this occasion. But dogs lead you everywhere, So anyway, Jessie became very close to me. And she lived for a long time, and she passed away in my arms, and I had a good relationship. And then one day, Hildegard came in from the RSPCA with this in her hand and said, "There you are. It's Misty." "Oh, hello." We've got other dogs there. And she put it down. It sat down. It just looked at me. "Hello, hello. How are you?" The days passed. Everywhere I went, sat in a corner. Look. Went and walks with me. Look. If I was going to do voiceovers, because I'm the king of the voiceovers, wherever I went, she made it hell. She'd go, "I'll be back in a minute, for God's sake, I'll be back in a minute." A little dog like this can make me feel like this. For God's sake, I'll be back. Went on for weeks and years and weeks and years. And I'd be on my bedside, and then I'm in bed, and then alongside me on the pillow, there's his face that close. Just adoring me. And I felt more deeply and deeply in love with Hildegard, smiling away. This dog adored me. I adored this dog. So I took her to the studios with me. And she was rather like that dog, you know, that the gramophone, that looks into the gramophone. And she went everywhere with me. I put her on the table. "All right, Brian, you can put her on the table. Just sit there and watch." Go on, Paul O'Grady, just go still on the table and watch. The whole thing. So Jessie, 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 Jessie. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, the years passed. We all get older, etc. She got weaker. I took her in the woods all the time, and she went everywhere. Remembrance Fields, Chobham Common, everywhere. It was wonderful walking with her. And she had such a great love for life. And then she started to age. And age. And then I started taking her to the vet. I said, "Well, can't you give her this and give her, well, it's a new drug there, can't you give her that?" "Yes, Brian, this will give her another 6 weeks of life." Because she was now 15, 16, going 17. "This will keep her going." She's making a nice recovery. And my wife said, "Darling, she's going. She's going, darling, she's going." And then I took her there by the graves in Wendlesham, and then onto Field of Remembrance. She walking very slowly, and her body's that thin, and her legs are that thin, and she's just a pair of eyes walking with me, still loving me. Ken Branagh watched me. He wept. He used to weep, Ken Branagh, watching me with the dog. I'm not doing that film. I'm not going abroad. I can't leave Misty. I can't leave her. Look at her, so old and shivering, and her eyes looking at me. I'm not doing this film. Paul Scofield, the great actor, who won the best Oscar for Man for All Seasons, he was offered a £2 million film, and he said, "You know, Brian, my conservatory is falling apart, and I don't need the money, but I can't take it." I said, "Why not, Paul?" "Because Buster's only half trained." And he gave up a £2 million film because Buster. Anyway. My language, when you work with animals, you do swear a lot. But as the Queen said to me, "You know, you said it on television the other night about 30 times in not the 9 o'clock news, but the word is an Anglo-Saxon word. It means spreading of seed." You can't faze the Queen, can you? Jeez. Anyway, "No, it's all right, I'm not in. Anyway, so I'm coming near to the end, ladies and gentlemen, and this is not the way I intended at all. I was going to be much more graceful and noble. But animals, I stink of animals, you see. I just stink of them because their smell is 14,000 times stronger than ours. I was like, you look at that, goes, oh, I met that dog there. He's loving me. He's telling a tale. And so forth. Anyway, so Misty got weaker. And we have lovely vets in Windlesham. I said, send Jill Tosie around. She came in. So I've got it prepared, Brian. She's way beyond. She's almost on the other side. So I took Misty in my arms. I took her in my arms, and she looked at me and said, I have to go. I could see, I have to go. No. Oh, just hold there. Who's the sugar? Who's the sugar? Who's the sugar? And the needle went to the side. Slowly and gradually, the light went out of her eyes. And I went to my cabin outside, and I stayed there for 3 days. I couldn't talk to anybody, not even Hildegard. I could not, in my soul, conceive how I could care for such a little dog. I don't weep, you see. I find it as an actor difficult to weep. Some actors weep so easily, don't they? If I weep in a play like I, Claudius or something, it's... and you do it by breath. But this is the first time in my life I was known as a tough guy. I could not stop weeping for 3 days. I couldn't get over it. And I'd got to bury her, you know, with all her lovely flowers and everything. I had to. She just couldn't stay in my arms all the time while I slept in my chair in the cabin. I was gone. I was finished. I was shredded. And to this day, recounting it, and such a shock to see her. Hey, Misty, look at the eye looking at you. She has had the most profound effect of anything in my life, the experience, and I've never got over it. I think, you see, that's why I'm here, because as my wife said, you've broken through, darling. Now you care for dogs. And as she said, a dog gives much more than it receives. On a lighter note, which doesn't sound it, my wife has cancer, and now she's in remission. And she's changing, isn't she? She's coming round beautifully. So I get in the house, relieved, things are going really well now, and from behind her back she goes, me. It's a little Yorkie. From Spain, ill-treated dog, being tortured and God knows what. We put it in the corn and it goes against the corn. It takes a lot for a dog to, it takes a lot for a dog to lose heart, doesn't it? I mean, dog will face anything. You can smash a dog, or people can do all kinds of things to dogs and they'll recover. They'll forgive you. And she's in the corner like that. And the day before yesterday, she turned around and looked at me. And gradually she's walked towards me. And now, of course, she's in my bed. And that's all I've got to say. Congratulations!